I never planned on running into her that morning. It was one of those slow Tuesdays where the world felt half asleep, the streets still damp from an overnight drizzle. The coffee shop on the corner wasn't even busy, just a couple of laptops glowing, a barista humming something tuneless. I came because it was familiar, predictable, my routine. I was half bent over my phone, typing out a message I knew I wouldn't send, when I heard her voice. Still the same order? I looked up, and there she was, my friend's mom. She remembered. I laughed, a little embarrassed. Yeah, guess I'm not that adventurous. Her smile was small, knowing. She leaned against the counter while waiting for her drink, her hand curled around the strap of her bag. I noticed how her thumb traced circles on the leather, like she was calming herself without thinking about it. I don't know why that detail stuck. We talked about nothing at first. Weather, how early it felt, how this place hadn't changed in years. But there was a pause, the kind that stretches just a second too long, and in it, I realized how easily I could get used to talking to her. She tilted her head. You come here often? Couple times a week, I said. It's quieter than the other places. Quieter's good, she murmured, more to herself than to me. When the barista called her name, she reached for her cup, fingers brushing the cardboard sleeve like she was testing the heat. I caught myself watching the motion a little too closely. I looked away fast, folding the edge of my napkin into sharp corners like it was the most important task in the world. She sat across from me, just for a minute. Said all the other tables were too close to the window glare. I nodded, pretending it was no big deal, but my heart thudded like I'd been caught doing something. The conversation skipped around, unsteady but easy in its own way. She asked about classes, I asked how work was going. She joked about forgetting how to use her son's new phone. I laughed, but my eyes kept drifting, the line of her sleeve as she pushed it back, the way she rested her chin in her palm when she listened. It wasn't dramatic, none of it. Just tiny shifts, like a song you realize you've been humming along to without noticing when it started. When her phone buzzed, she glanced at it, then at me. Something unreadable flickered in her eyes. She slipped the phone back into her bag without answering. I should get going, she said softly, standing. I nodded, though I wanted to ask her to stay. Instead, I pressed the folded napkin flat on the table, a pointless gesture. As she reached the door, she looked back once. Just enough to catch my eyes, just enough to make me wonder if she wanted to say more. Then she was gone, and the bell above the door jingled like it had nothing to do with me. I sat there a while longer, my coffee cooling untouched. Finally, when I picked up my phone again, I saw it. A new message. From her. This stays between us. And that was when everything changed. The message sat on my phone like a secret I wasn't ready to hold. This stays between us. Simple words, but they carried a weight I couldn't name. I told myself not to read into it. She probably meant the coffee shop, the conversation, the way she'd lingered at my table longer than she needed to. That's all. Just a small thing sealed away. But the more I replayed it, the more I couldn't let it go. We didn't see each other right away after that morning. A week passed, maybe more. Enough time for me to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Then one evening, I was walking home with a bag of groceries, and there she was, on the porch, untangling a string of lights her son had left in a box since last December. You're good at timing, she called out, half smiling. I set the groceries down and climbed the steps. Need help? She sighed, holding up the mess of wires like proof of her defeat. I think they've given up on me. I took them gently, our fingers brushing for a second longer than necessary. Or maybe you just need another pair of hands. We worked in silence for a while. The lights resisted, pulling tighter the more we tried, but eventually the knots loosened. I noticed the small things, how her hair slipped from its clip, how she pressed her lips together when concentrating, how she tilted closer to see what I was doing. You're patient, she said after a while. Not really. I just don't mind this. Her eyes lingered on me, soft but searching, like she was deciding whether to ask something more. Instead, she let out a quiet laugh. I used to do this with my husband. He'd curse the whole time, and I'd tell him to slow down. I don't know why that memory came back just now. Her voice shifted on the word used. Past tense. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't press, though 100 questions sat in my throat. Divorced, maybe. Or just alone? I couldn't tell. The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was heavier, but in a way that felt honest. I wanted to say something, anything, to cut through it. But instead, I kept my hands busy, pretending the lights required more care than they did. When we finally untangled them, she laughed again, softer this time. You're a lifesaver. It's just lights, I said. Not just, she murmured, almost to herself. I caught myself staring, and when she noticed, I looked away quickly, focusing on the groceries by my feet. My chest tightened with the sudden awareness of what this looked like. Me on her porch, her son's friend, too close for comfort. I imagined what people would think if they saw us. Worse, what he would think. The thought should have been enough to push me back, to create space. But instead, when she brushed a strand of hair from her face and sighed, I found myself saying, "You look tired. Do you want me to make you some tea?" Her surprise flickered across her face, then softened into something else. "You don't have to. I know." A few minutes later, we were sitting at her kitchen table. The kettle hissed, the cups steamed, and the house felt too quiet for how close we sat. She wrapped her hands around the mug, not drinking, just holding the heat. "You ever feel," she said suddenly, "like people only see you for one version of yourself? Mother, worker, whatever box they want. And everything else just fades." I hesitated, then nodded. "All the time." She looked at me, really looked, and something unspoken passed between us. Recognition, maybe, or relief. We didn't talk much after that. The tea cooled, the room dimmed, and neither of us moved to switch on the light. I watched the steam rise and fall, watched her fingers tap the rim of the cup like she was working up to something. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. I mumbled a good night, reaching for the handle, but she stopped me with the faintest touch, her hand brushing my arm, just enough to freeze me where I was. "Thank you," she whispered. "For the lights? For the tea? For not asking too much?" I didn't know, but the warmth of her hand lingered long after she let go, and I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It happened again, though I told myself it wouldn't. A few days later, I stopped by to return the thermos I'd borrowed, a small thing, barely worth a knock at her door. But when she opened it, hair still damp from a shower, sweater sleeves rolled past her wrists, I knew I'd crossed into something I couldn't name. "Thought you might want this back?" I said, holding the thermos out like a shield. She smiled, but there was a hesitation in it. "Thanks. You didn't have to, I know." Silence stretched, long enough for me to hear the hum of the fridge, the faint creak of the floor as she shifted. Then she stepped aside. "You want to come in for a minute?" I shouldn't have. I did. The house was warm, dimmer than usual, only one lamp on in the corner. She tucked her hair behind her ear, moving toward the kitchen. I followed, close enough to notice the faint scent of soap still clinging to her. She poured us both water, setting the glasses on the table. Neither of us drank. My hands stayed on the rim, hers resting flat on the wood, fingers spread like she needed grounding. "You've been around here a lot lately," she said lightly, not accusing, not quite curious either. I tried to laugh. "Just coincidence." Her eyes flicked to mine, quick, sharp. "Is it?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat felt too tight, and the quiet between us grew heavier by the second. That's when the front door rattled. A voice, her son's, calling out for her. She froze. My chest went cold. "Kitchen," she called back, too quickly, stepping away from the table as if the space between us had never been there. She busied herself with the glasses, pretending to tidy. I stood, heart hammering, suddenly aware of how close I'd been leaning toward her. Her son walked in, phone in hand, barely glancing at me. "Hey, didn't know you were here." "Just dropping something off," I said, forcing casual into my voice. He nodded, distracted, already moving toward his room. The door shut again. The silence that followed was different now. Shaken, fragile. She exhaled, leaning back against the counter, her hand covering her mouth like she could erase what almost happened. I didn't move. Couldn't. "You should," she began, then stopped. Her eyes flicked to me again, softer this time. Tired. Wanting. Scared. I stepped closer, not much, just enough to feel the air shift between us. My hand almost touched hers where it rested on the counter. Almost. Her breath caught. Mine too. Neither of us spoke. And in that suspended second, with the hum of the fridge and her son's muffled voice down the hall, it felt like the world narrowed to just that distance, the half-inch that could undo everything. I didn't close it. Neither did she. But the possibility lingered like a shadow we both pretended not to see that it was late afternoon. One of those gray days that felt undecided between rain and nothing at all. She'd asked if I wanted to walk, said she needed fresh air, though I think it was more about getting away from the walls of her house. We didn't say much at first, just the sound of shoes on pavement, the occasional car passing by. She carried her hands in her pockets, shoulders hunched slightly, like she was holding herself together. Been a long week, she finally said. I glanced at her. Work, everything. A thin smile. I'm just tired of being who people expect. I didn't know what to say, so I let her words hang there, like the low clouds overhead. We reached a small park, quiet except for a few kids in the distance. She led us to a bench, brushed away some damp leaves before sitting. I sat beside her, leaving a careful space, though not as much as I should have. The silence between us was alive. Not comfortable, not exactly uncomfortable either, just charged. She picked at the seam of her coat. Do you ever think about how you'll be remembered? By people? I hesitated. Sometimes. Not sure I like the answers. She laughed softly, then fell quiet again. Her eyes followed a group of birds scattering across the sky, but I felt her thoughts circling somewhere closer. I used to think, she said slowly, that by this age I'd feel settled, like the big choices would be behind me. But instead, it feels like I'm always looking at what I didn't do, what I shouldn't want. Her voice caught faintly on that last part. I turned toward her. She didn't look at me, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the way she pressed her lips together. You ever regret something? I asked, before it even happens. That made her glance at me. Quick, searching, almost startled. For a second, neither of us breathed. I shouldn't be sitting here with you, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. You know that, don't you? I nodded. Too quickly. Yeah. But I didn't move. Neither did she. Her hand slipped out of her pocket, resting loosely between us on the bench. I noticed the way her fingers curled, then stilled, as if waiting. My own hand twitched, wanting to close that small distance, but I kept it on my knee, knuckles tight. People would think she stopped. Shook her head. No, it doesn't matter what they'd think. It matters what it would do to him. To you. Her son. My friend. The word hung unspoken between us. I swallowed hard. And to you. Her laugh was short, hollow. Me? No. I'm already past saving. That broke something in me. The way she said it. Not dramatic, just matter of fact. Like she'd rehearsed it too many times alone. You're not, I said. The words came out rougher than I meant. She turned fully then, eyes locking onto mine. For the first time, she didn't look guarded. She looked bare. I don't know why I tell you things I don't tell anyone else, she whispered. I almost said because I listen. Almost said because I see you. Instead, I just held her gaze, waiting. The air between us thickened. I leaned slightly forward without realizing. She didn't lean back. Her hand shifted, brushing against mine. Not holding. Not pulling away. Just there. The sound of children laughing in the distance broke the moment for a second, but neither of us moved. I can't, she started, then stopped. My chest ached with everything I couldn't say. I know. The pause stretched, unbearable. Her eyes flicked to my lips for the briefest moment. Back again. And then she asked, so softly I almost missed it, what are we doing? The question hung there, fragile, trembling, the only thing standing between us and something we couldn't take back. The question, what are we doing? Stayed with me long after that day on the bench. It echoed in the quiet, in the spaces where my thoughts usually wandered. For a while, I convinced myself it meant something was about to shift, that we were on the edge of something. But the next time I saw her, she was different. Not unkind, not cold, just distant. Her smile was lighter, quicker to disappear. Her words shorter, neatly folded, like she'd ironed out the wrinkles of our last conversation. I caught myself waiting for the way she used to pause, the half-laughs, the searching looks. But instead she moved briskly through her sentences, giving me nothing to hold on to. At first, I thought I'd imagined it. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe I was reading too much into things again. But then days passed, and she didn't text. Not even the casual reminders. Not even the small jokes she used to drop into my phone like pebbles into water. I started walking by her house more than usual, telling myself I just happened to be in the neighborhood. The porch lights were on, sometimes not. Once, I saw her car parked out front, but no sound from inside. Another time, the curtains were drawn when they never used to be. I didn't knock. I wanted to. My hand even hovered once above the wood, but I pulled it back before contact. Instead, I waited and waited. Finally, she reached out. Late, almost midnight. Just one line. Sorry, busy lately. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I typed, it's fine. I get it. Deleted. Typed, did I do something wrong? Deleted. Typed, I miss talking to you. Deleted. In the end, I didn't send anything. The next week, I saw her at the store, aisle 5. She was with someone, a man, maybe her ex, maybe not. Their carts side by side, her laughter louder than I remembered. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and chose not to. I ducked into another aisle before she could. My chest felt too tight, like I'd been caught somewhere I didn't belong. That night, I lay in bed replaying every detail. Her voice on the bench. Her hand almost in mine. The way she said I shouldn't be sitting here with you. Was that a warning? A confession? Both. I imagined her explaining it to him, whoever he was. I imagined her deciding I was just a moment, a phase she could close the book on without looking back. But then I remembered the look in her eyes, the way her voice softened when she said she told me things she told no one else. And I couldn't reconcile it. Couldn't file it away as nothing. It wasn't heartbreak. Not exactly. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. The days kept moving anyway. I stopped going to the coffee shop as often. I avoided the street past her house. I told myself it was better this way, cleaner. But every so often, I'd check my phone late at night, expecting something. A message that never came. And in that empty space, I realized how much of me was still waiting. Waiting for her to open the door. Waiting for her to say it wasn't over. Waiting for her to finish the sentence. But the door stayed closed. The message stayed unsent. And the pause stretched longer, like it could last forever. It was raining the night she finally spoke again. Not hard, just a steady drizzle that painted the streetlights into blurs. I'd been walking back from the bus stop when I saw her porch light flick on. The door opened, and there she was, framed in the glow. You're soaked, she said, her voice small but clear. I froze on the sidewalk, caught between leaving and stepping closer. My jacket clung to me, shoes heavy with water. She didn't move at first, just held the door open like an unspoken invitation. I climbed the steps. She stepped back. The house smelled faintly of tea and something baked earlier in the day. The warmth hit me all at once, along with the awkwardness I'd been rehearsing ways to avoid. I wasn't sure you'd come by again, she said. I wasn't sure either, I admitted. My voice cracked on the last word. We ended up in the kitchen, the same table where we'd once sat with untouched tea. She set out 2 mugs now, filled them with hot water, and slid one toward me. Her hands shook slightly when she set the kettle down. The silence settled thick between us, filled only by the faint hiss of the rain outside. Finally, she spoke. I've been avoiding you. I stared at the steam rising from my mug. Yeah, I noticed. She winced. I thought it would make it easier. Did it? Her eyes flicked up, caught mine for a second, then dropped. No, the word hit harder than I expected. I gripped the mug tighter, trying to ground myself in the heat. I saw you, I said quietly. At the store. With someone. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. That was my ex-husband. A pause. We're not together. Haven't been for years. But he drifts in and out. Reminds me of what I've already lost. And what I shouldn't want again. Her voice cracked on the last part. She pressed her palm against her forehead, like she wanted to block herself from saying more. Why tell me this? I asked. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes were tired, raw, stripped of all the careful distance she'd been keeping. Because you matter more than you should, she whispered. The room tilted. I swallowed, throat dry. Do you have any idea what it's been like, thinking I imagined it all? That none of it was real. Her hand shifted across the table, fingers twitching like she might reach for mine, but couldn't quite make the leap. It was real. Something cracked open in me at those words. Not relief, not victory, but something softer, scarier. Then why? I stopped, exhaled. Why pull away? Her eyes shone with something I couldn't name. Because you're my son's friend. Because you deserve someone who doesn't come with all of this. All of what? She gave a small, broken laugh. Baggage. Age. Guilt. Every reason to regret me before you've even begun. I leaned forward then, not brave, not certain, just tired of silence. I don't regret you. The words hung there, sharp and fragile. She blinked, once, twice, like she wasn't sure she'd heard right. The rain picked up, tapping harder against the windows. Her hand finally closed the distance, brushing against mine. Not a grip, not a claim, just contact. Warmth. Real. We sat like that for what felt like a long time. Breathing. Existing. Finally, she whispered, "So what do we do now?" I didn't have an answer. Not a good one. Not one that would make sense outside this kitchen. But I held her gaze, steady for once, and said the only thing I could, "We'll figure it out." She gave me the smallest smile, barely there, but it reached her eyes. Her thumb moved once, lightly over my knuckle, before she pulled her hand back. The silence that followed didn't feel like distance this time. It felt like something beginning. And when she breathed out, almost too soft to catch, I thought I heard her say, "Okay." Time didn't stop after that night in her kitchen. It didn't rush forward either. It just shifted. We didn't fall into some whirlwind. No late-night declarations, no reckless kisses under streetlights. It wasn't that kind of story. Instead, it was smaller things scattered across ordinary days, and maybe that's why it lasted. She texted me first, a week later. Just a simple, 8:47 a.m. coffee. That number became a kind of shorthand between us. Not a secret code exactly, but a marker. The way we knew the world was still spinning, and we were still in it together. Sometimes we met at the cafe, sometimes on the park bench where she once asked me, "What are we doing?" The bench was the same, weather-worn and slightly crooked, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It just felt like ours. We didn't talk about everything at once. She still carried the weight of her past, the ex who drifted in and out. The years she felt had blurred away. I carried my own awkwardness, my fear of how people would see us, of what her son would think if he ever knew. But we learned to sit in that silence without drowning in it. Tea cooling between us, or a black coffee I never finished, or the sound of rain threading through the windows. We didn't rush the words anymore. One evening, I helped her carry groceries in. It should have been nothing, a bag of oranges, a loaf of bread, the clink of glass bottles. But when she brushed my arm and didn't pull away, I realized I no longer had to question whether the moment meant something. It did. Every time. Little by little, she let me in. Not all at once, not even cleanly. She told me stories about her 20s, about books she loved, about the years she thought no one was really listening. And I listened. I think that's what she wanted most. Not to be saved, not to be fixed, just to be seen without flinching. And I let her see me too. The doubts, the restless way I'd always felt younger and older at the same time. The loneliness I tried to cover with half-written texts and unfinished thoughts. She never laughed at it. She never told me I was being dramatic. She just let me be. The guilt never fully vanished. Sometimes, when I caught my reflection in her kitchen window, I'd think of my friend, of what he'd say if he knew. The thought stayed with me, like a shadow at the edge of every moment. But the shadow never won. Because the truth was simpler than all the fear, life felt better with her in it. Not perfect, just better. One morning, months later, we sat on that same bench. The air was crisp, and the sun cut low across the park, making the grass shine damp. She handed me a thermos, the one I'd once borrowed and never wanted to return. "Black coffee," she said, with that small, knowing smile. I took it, unscrewed the lid, let the steam rise into the cool air. "Tea's cooling fast," I said, nodding at her cup. She gave a soft laugh. "Some things don't change." We sat in silence after that, shoulders brushing lightly, not needing to move apart. I thought about the first time I'd noticed her thumbs circling the strap of her bag, the folded napkin, the touch at the kitchen counter. All those fragments that once felt like the whole story, and now were just the beginning of one. I didn't say anything profound. Neither did she. But when her hand found mine, resting in that quiet space between us, I understood. Not everything has to be spoken to be real. And I'll never forget the way she squeezed my hand once, gently, before whispering a word only I would catch. Okay.